You moved to the United States at the age of 6,
Hmm.
very young. Do you have memories back home? Do you have any memories back there, or is there something that you like, you think about sometimes?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I have. So I moved here when I was 6. Moved to Milwaukee, Wisconsin. This was in the early '80s, and Milwaukee was very much a different place than it is now. Over the years, we've been hit hard by just a lot of manufacturing jobs who have left town, and I think that's a lot of just urban cities. And during the 1980s, I mean, Milwaukee was really a thriving hub of manufacturing jobs, and so that's why we kind of moved here. But when we did, I was just kind of formulating my memories at that time. So 6 years old, my brother's 4 years old. My mom was a relatively young mother, and my father, so for us, there was a lot of just getting used to and formulating memories once we got here.
Yeah.
But you obviously have a few memories, but they're not like concrete memories, if that makes sense. They're like kind of like they come and they go, and you remember like parts of, we used to have this thing called a tubal, and a tubal, like pretty much like in farms,
Yeah.
you would take a bath out in the tubal, and everybody was it was like a little mini swimming pool. Wasn't too big, but for us when you're kids, and you can like bathe together and be in this little tubal with like a little pump thing,
Yeah.
the water, so water comes out of the well, and
Yeah.
so that was one of my most fond memories when I was young, when I came over here. And I think even early on, my parents used to give me baths and kind of like the washer and dryer sink, like the bigger ones.
Oh.
So,
Right.
so I kind of like it was, yeah. You reminisce about those days,
Yeah.
but not too many memories. But I've been back since I've been here, and I think that helped to solidify some memories of just a vagueness of what you remember
Yes.
about the farm and where things were.
Yeah.
And just within children, they're formulating their memories at that time. But I remember, like, most of my memories came in when I was in the States already.
Oh, how old were you when you went back?
When I went back the first time, I was about 15, 16 years old.
Oh,
So
wow.
my mom's father had passed, and so my grandfather, and we went back there to just pay our respects. And at that time, I mean, a lot of people would say, "Do you remember me?" You have aunts and uncles be like,
Right.
"Do you remember me? Do you remember me? You remember I was your auntie?" And I'm like,
No.
I had no idea. But
They try to pull the like, oh, I haven't seen you since you were this big. I'm like, I don't remember you at all.
yeah, I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But then over time, you kind of like, smells are one of those things that comes back quicker than other things.
Right.
And
Right.
so your senses,
Yeah.
you might not have it here in your like sort of your intellect,
Yeah.
but it's somewhere there, and you smell. And sometimes like family smells a certain way. Right?
Yeah, that's true. That's
I'm not saying like a bad smell, but
yeah,
a comforting smell.
Right. Vaguely familiar. Right.
Yeah.
Comforting smell, yeah. Yeah, so that was, that was kind of, and then I've been back there a few times after that as an adult, and I've taken my children back. So all 4 of my children have been back there, and my daughter she's a little bit older, so she's been back there a couple times.
Yeah.
She definitely has like the language skills, the sort of the cultural understanding too, so she understands some of the nuances.
Yeah.
And for my boys, they're a little bit younger. You tell them, like, can you speak Punjabi or can you speak like Urdu, and they'll be like Punjabi. Like they have no idea what it is. So yeah, it's super interesting to watch them. But hopefully, I think next year, after COVID-19, we'll try to go back and sort of concrete some memories of what India looks like to them.
What was it like culturally for you and your family to sort of like integrate yourself into this new world, right? In Milwaukee. Like, was it difficult for you growing up? Was there anything that kind of pops up in your mind as like a definitive experience for you, your own experience?
Yeah, so I mean, that's a great question, Alex. Growing up, and I don't remember it being difficult because, when you get used to the soup that you exist in, you just think it's normal. So, I mean, like a lot of times I think, as I was reading your book, Dydine, and I was going back to your life, and as as tragic as everything is, I think sometimes our brain just gets used to whatever you're existing in. And it's like somebody else, they're like, oh, that's, but to me, it was just normal to kind of be this. And when we came, there wasn't a lot of Punjabi or Sikh families in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Right.
I would say there's maybe just about 5. And so there wasn't even like a subculture of going to the temple, or, I didn't really make my first Indian friends, Punjabi friends, until I got to college at Marquette University.
Oh, wow.
And so growing up, there's, and it was, there was somebody who described the role of an observer. And I think that for me growing up, I took on the role of an observer quite a bit of like, I'm navigating this culture and I'm moving around quite a bit. We moved around from like apartment to apartment to apartment to apartment.
Right.
And like I said, like Milwaukee, Wisconsin in the 70s was just a thriving hub of manufacturing. You could graduate high school, get a good paying job, buy a house on one salary.
Oh, wow.
Like that was Milwaukee, Wisconsin,
Yeah.
in the 70s. And in the 80s, a lot of the manufacturing huge companies that were there just started to leave town. And as they started to leave town, they left a huge vacuum for just, people being unemployed. It was such a good industry that some people could lose their job one day, and then the next day they would know they would have a job at another manufacturing company.
Oh, wow.
That's
Like that.
Like they would just, there was like that type of environment. Yeah. So job security. And at that time, really, like families were thriving, white families, black families, Latino families. I mean, the family structure was really just intact in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And we came here kind of like when that was starting to not be that way. And we started to see in the 80s and 90s, we started to see like drugs start to hit the street. And as you started to see drugs and the illegal economy sort of taking the place of those manufacturing jobs, you started to see crime escalate. And so, you were trying to move around to try to find safe neighborhoods, and everybody was playing this game of like, what neighborhood's bad, what neighborhood's good, what neighborhood's turning bad. Right. Okay, let me try to keep beating that, but still stay in a place where we didn't have to pay a lot of rent because we didn't have a lot of money. Yeah. And so that was really like my upbringing was never really rooted in like stability for a long time. And then finally, when we bought our first house on the south side of Milwaukee, then finally there was a place to say, okay, like this is our house, right? And we know we're going to be here. But before that, it was really moving from neighborhood to neighborhood. Sometimes you were, and really like you were, at that time, I knew I wasn't black enough to be black. I knew I wasn't white enough to be white. Yeah. Wasn't Latino enough to be Latino. Wasn't anything enough to be anything. So you just oftentimes you like the cultures that you were, were playing a role in who you were becoming, later on in life. That would be a great gift for me. Yeah. But at that time when you're trying to fit in, it sucks because hard. All you want to do is like be part of something, be part of some clique, part of some club. Yeah. But then you have to explain yourself. Yeah. But later on, I mean, I talk about this, but later on I got to be myself. And myself, for anybody now, they're like, that's dope. That's awesome. You get to be yourself. Like who gets to be their self in these days, right?
So many.
Yeah. And we actually just did a video talking about like identity, and kind of what you were talking about growing up through adolescence, not really knowing where you fit in. And then, that being sort of like a turning point for you to look inward and be like, this is who I am. And it's up to me to live that way to the best of my abilities.
Yeah, and I was driven by like that for before I knew, sometimes you just know that certain times you're just driven by something else. And it's like this introspection that you're forced to do because you know it or want to do it, or even, but I think like some people call it meditation, some people call it something else, right. But it's a deep introspection that you can do. And it's like later on, if you know who you are, nobody can really move you or maneuver you, right? And now what we want to do is we want to teach youth and teens to say, how do you find that self? Right. Not the identity self. I mean, and not to say that identity doesn't play a big role in people's lives. Not to say that skin color is not important. Not to say ethnicity, language, all these, things that are not important. But know thyself.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. The identity is really outside. When you find yourself within, you don't really care much about what the society is telling you.
That's right.
You know,
Yeah.
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 Pradeep, so growing up as as a child of an immigrant, and you saw your family juggle around, trying to make it here in America for you guys. Most immigrant families, they're really, really working hard for their kids to live
Yeah.
a beautiful life. Most of them never had the chance to experience. What was your biggest dream? What was the dream you just after you found yourself, or even before? What was your biggest dream to live the American dream, to accomplish?
Well, just like as I was growing up and I was watching my parents.
Yes.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. Growing up and watching my parents, so language is a difficult thing for a first generation immigrant, and sometimes even nuances of culture, nuances of sort of respect of elders
Yes.
are lost sometimes within the Western world.
Yeah.
And you start to see, and you're like, holy cow, like these children, they question their parents. And something, not to say that's good or bad or anything that like equates, value to it. But when you're growing up and you're not able to question your parents, you're not able to say, so you observe again, and you're seeing, and it was never lost on me how hard my parents were working. And they were gone all the time.
Yeah.
And, we moved around, and so we moved from Milwaukee, Wisconsin to North Carolina. North Carolina was just a different environment. As we moved down there, again, like for manufacturing jobs, Dad was trying to find a job at a plant in North Carolina. He found a job. We didn't like it there. So we came back to Milwaukee, Wisconsin. But this time he decides, he's like, I'm not going to go to a manufacturing job. I'm going to try to start my own business. And so he starts his own business. And, we started off with a mechanic shop, which we converted into a convenience store. And I just remember just watching him, and this is before, the codes and inspecting code. You could do some of the work yourself. So it was like oftentimes me, Dad, my brother, just kind of helping out and trying to fix everything up. When you don't have a lot of money, you just try to do whatever you can yourself. And I think just watching them hustle to make it in life and make a reality out of this American dream that people have, and then obviously like August 5th being told, and I think there's a lot of people within our country that are being told that they're not entitled the American dream. You could work as hard as you want. You even have to outwork people, just to kind of have the same shot at it. Dare you not fail. Right? Dare you not, it's like, if you fail, you never know if you're going to have that shot. So oftentimes when we talk about issues of privilege, we talk about issues of entitlement, we talk about all of these issues, we're talking about the sense of, I have to do it. I have to succeed. Right. And I not only have to succeed because for me, but I have to succeed for the generations, the lineage, all, the ancestors, everything that has sacrificed for you to even have a shot, right? A small shot, let you not fail.
Right.
And that's how much pressure that I think sometimes we put on ourselves. Maybe we can't fail, maybe we can fail, but in our mind, it's ingrained in.
I feel like I have
so watching them kind of go through all of this, that was never, so the translation part of it, them giving me advice was difficult for them to do. So their advice came by showing, and their advice came by don't ever give up.
Right. But I mean, and that eventually led to law enforcement, right?
How did that happen?
Yeah. What's that story?
How did that happen?
How did law enforcement happen?
Yeah.
Well, so going to school, I was I think I was over at Whitewater at this time, and Whitewater was a smaller college in middle of Wisconsin, and then I transferred to Marquette. And why that happened was, have you guys ever seen the movie Bad Boys?
Yeah.
Yes.
Will Smith and Martin Lawrence?
Yeah.
I watched that movie way too many times.